Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Um, what another week, a lot of games to discuss. A lot of things changed again, not as much as last week, but things certainly changed. Um, at the end of the last rankings, we talked about the possible repercussions of this week, and oh lordy, did they happen in
They
grand
re-
fact.
they repercussed.
They repercussed. Um, So I'm excited to dive in. I think there's a lot of nuance to talk about from here forward.
Sure.
For me, at least going into rankings, and Steven, I don't know how you feel. I feel like for the most part, with maybe one or two exceptions, no one is in significantly that much
I agree.
in a better position or worse position than anyone else.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, with maybe like I can think of one, maybe two exceptions. Um, for the most part, everyone's on a very equal playing field. So for me, the rankings can know like if I were to just be like ranking positionally, like it'd be like fives forever. Like you know what I mean? Like so for me, the rankings now, like at least for this week, and we'll see how it goes, but like so much of it, and like this is gonna sound silly, has to be ranked. You could be in a perfectly safe position, but if you're not playing well and people aren't respecting you, I'm gonna give you a red score. And if you're in a maybe a slightly precarious position, but that's not that much more precarious than someone that's like maybe a little safe, but you're playing very well, I'll give you a good score because you like you know what I mean. Like it's we're no longer at that point where I feel like positionally can really determine so much because it's a split house. Anyone could go home at any time. It's very exciting.
Cool. It's a Scott slide that he loves to show.
I love to show this. So yes, the end of last week. Wow, look at that. A major turn of events. All of these green scores rising to the top and all of these red arrows dropping down to the bottom. We left with Luke in the top position after he masterfully saved Fletcher in the previous week, positioned himself in the smack dab middle of the house, and I think really set him up for a successful endgame. Followed by Kayla, who like underdog queen. Who would have seen this coming? Not me, but here she is. And then we've got Jackson, the king of logic, down at the bottom. Of course, Isabel went home. Joe has been playing a bit. I believe scientifically the term is stupidly and gullibly, but
Mm.
sure, king. And then Alex, major drop off. The scores show how she was doing so well. And then all of a sudden, something didn't go her way. We'll dive into all of the details pretty much now. Stephen, any overarching thoughts before we dive in?
Nope. Let's go.
Alrighty. Starting off with Alex, the person that went home this week. Okay. Alex, starting with the good.
Wait, Scott, you went all acoustic on us. What happened? Did you click something?
No.
Oh, now you're better. You're good.
Alex, starting with the good. She, I really have to think about this. It's gonna be harder to think about the good this week than the bad. Um, she respects the game enough to be like, I'm not gonna vote bitter. I'm not like quitting. And like I can say I can respect certain things. So there's that. So like queen there. Now here's the bad. Uh, Alex can dish it, but she can't take it. After weeks of her ratting Fletcher out week after week to this little inner circle group and throwing him up on the like getting people to throw him up on the block, saying that like, oh, I want to target Caden and Fletcher, routing this whole thing out. The minute that they find out that you're playing them and they make a move against you, these people are so dumb. These people are so dumb. They're so stupid. Like, they're not even being smart. Like, they're just voting with the majority because it's like like, no, for each and every one of these people, it was smartest to take you out. It was smartest to take you out. I'd love it if she could just leave the game and be like, wow, I played you and I got got. I got caught and you got me, made the best player win. I'm watching out for the best player. And to a certain extent, she did that a little bit with like Fletcher on the way out saying like Fletcher deserves to win. Whoever takes him out, like you'll be the next player after that. But like right now, Fletcher's the only one that's like killing it. But then telling other people that like voted her out, like, don't ever speak to me again. Don't talk to me. Like, get over yourself with peace and love. With peace and love, it was smartest for Lucas to vote you out. Lucas playing the middle. It was smartest for Caroline to vote you out. You've had like a little vendetta against her from the very beginning of the game, you and Joe. It was smartest for Emily to take you out. So like, and like, of course, like they don't have all of the info, but like after weeks of ratting these people out and forming smaller alliances without them, and then they found out, like, yeah, they're gonna vote you out. On top of that, so there's all of that. So with all that being said, I would have considered giving Alex a 2 this week because at the very last minute, she put up a fight to campaign to stay. She had like she didn't not fight to stay. However, I cannot in good conscience give anyone that went home after intentionally not competing in the veto, after asking to be put up on the block, anything but a 1. So it's with all the peace and love in the world because she joined the season last minute and killed it for the first half. But after seemingly like the first thing not going your way, being like, I'm done, that's a 1 from me. It's a 1 with love. It's not an I hate you 1 because I still very much enjoy Alex, but like it's a 1. I have other thoughts, but like I can't articulate them right now. So Steven, you go.
I don't have anything nice to say, so I'm going with a 1, and I'm not going to complete my thoughts at all. But I would not give her as much credit as you did. But Alex gets a 1 this week. Let's move on.
Yeah. Alrighty. Caroline. Okay. Caroline is someone that I feel good about still. She's not someone that's going to be targeted immediately soon. However, like I said, a lot of these people aren't necessarily going to be targeted soon, but depending on what side wins HOH, like she is just as likely of a nominee as I think most of these people. No one's an unlikely nominee at this point.
Yeah.
So I can't just like give her a positive score based off of that because it's true of everyone. My thing with Caroline is a slight lack of agency that I feel like we need to see more if she wants to end up winning the game. It's a lot of like, it's exactly what I said last week. She'll give like a nothing ball of information and then ask what other people think and then just like try and figure out what they're saying and then like agree with it. But does so in a bunch of different conversations where it's like, with last week, it was like, so I've heard that Fletcher is the majority, but I'm up in the air. What do you think we should do? And then it's like she needs to be like manipulated into giving her thoughts. Like Luke manipulates her into like giving her thoughts on the matter. You know what I mean? Like, so I just wish she would like push a little more for what she wants. On top of that, we'll get into it with the two of them being Caroline and our next person, Emily. What a major dropping of the ball with Jason. My God. Jason is someone that's on the other side of the house. We know that. For what reason would you not try and like hold on to him so that like if he won HOH, like wouldn't consider targeting you, would still have your best interest if one of his allies won HOH. Maybe be like, don't target Caroline and Emily necessarily. Like, why are we like clearly intentionally lying to him, keeping him out of information when it's not even like not giving it to him. It's Jason's like, no, I know you have thoughts on this. So what are your thoughts on this if we're an alliance? And they come up with the dumbest. Oh, Emily has a glitch. We'll get to Emily. We'll get to Emily. We're talking about Caroline first. I just think that Caroline is not doing enough to warrant a win, but is playing safely. I think there are people that are playing, other people that are playing safely that are playing better though. So I am going to be lowering my score. Not a ton. I'm going to sit at a 5 for Caroline this week.
Yeah, I'm also going to a 5 as well. I think Caroline, again, you mentioned the blunder with Jason, but also just like I do feel like she had a lot more pull coming out of last week. I feel like last week she was one of the people to be a big proponent for saving Fletcher. And I mean this week was generally like a quieter week in general. With the exception of the veto meeting and the blow-ups from that, it was going to be Alex going all week, in a sense. But I do worry that with every week that she kind of sits back behind the scenes, that's one more week we're getting closer to the end, and she doesn't have really much to show for it. Which I don't want, and I don't. That's not to say that that's going to be something that's going to be continuing until the end of the game. Just for right now, if the jury were voting at this point, she wouldn't beat many of these people here.
Well, it's just it's a combination of like there are some people, especially like in the history of the game, where it's like if they say the right thing and they explain their game that the jury just isn't seeing, I'm like, yeah, you deserve to win. But this is a twofold scenario of one, I don't think the jury is going to want to give her a win, and two, I don't think she has anything to say
Yeah,
other than she was up on the block early and then survived. But like that's the story of Fletcher, that's the story of Joe, that is the story of a lot of people coming up.
I don't
So
necessarily see either of them making it there though. But we'll see. Long game left. But 5 for me. But love Caroline. I I couldn't be like I would be very happy if she got to the end and pulled off some moves towards the end and won the game. Like I would be so happy. So I'm hoping for that if she can. But we'll see. Emily.
oh my God, girl.
Emily.
Um, Another person that's just dropping the ball, and
Em-
I think even more than Caroline. Socially, she's set up better just by nature of having Luke as an ally as well. But I think Emily, and I'm looking down the row of everyone here. At this point in the game, I think Emily is the biggest goat to take to the end. Right? Who here is not beating Emily in a final two? I think Caroline beats Emily in a final two. Like if the jury just had to give it to someone, I think Emily is last on most people's lists. So there's that. With peace and love, of course. I just feel like she has dropped the ball with a lot of people. I don't know. I've said this like throughout the season where it's like she was set up amazingly in the early days of the game and just like doesn't keep up bonds with people that she doesn't prioritize first. Comparing her to someone like Jason or like Luke, or like Alex for the first half of the game, where it's like you can have your priority alliance and the people that you prioritize, but then you're still talking and gaining information and working with other people because you don't know what's going to work out. She completely jumped ship from the group with Jason Jason noticed. She completely jumped ship from the BB Snap groups. People like Faven noticed. Um, Alex and Joe really were like the last to get on board with this, but now like finally they've noticed. Um, and it's just like, and for what? And now like you're like low key like disliked for like turning on all of your allies for what? Because it's not even like you're aligned with everyone else. It's like you've just aligned yourselves with Caroline, Fletcher, and Luke. There's still other people out there that you're not necessarily aligned with, like Jackson, like Kayla. And you've dropped the ball with other people. So I don't know. I just don't see it for Emily, unfortunately, at this point. But there's a lot of game left. She's not in the worst position, but I'm just not impressed with the gameplay that's happening right now. Sorry, I'm gonna give her a 4.
Yeah, I'm also going down to a 4 as well. I think as days go by, she's kind of losing whatever agency and pull that she did have. And as the days go on, I think other people who were similar to her are now starting to pull ahead of her in terms of likelihood of winning the game. I think you're right. I think she is one of, if not, like, might be the least likely person to win the game. But also, like you said, still a lot of game left, still a lot of people to be evicted. But also, like you said, like right now, I just don't see it for Emily at this point in the game. Um, but she only has to beat out one other person to win the game. So we'll see. And there's a lot of game left. So 4s for Emily this week. Yay. Okay. Faven. Happy
Faven's
birthday, Faven. Sorry. Go ahead.
Faven's a really interesting case again because it's like, firstly, love Faven's attitude towards the game. I live for someone that's like, camp, fuck it, let's do it. You know what I mean? And like that's what Faven is, and it's like I really appreciate the go lucky. Let's play it. If it works out, it works out, and if not, oh well, it's an iMessage Big Brother game. Life will go on. So like I love that. I love that, and I love having Faven here. Um, I think like she knows, but also doesn't like totally mind the fact that it's like, she's not the most socially connected, but also she's not the most disliked. In fact, now I think after this week, like, especially if looking forward, and like, granted, at this point, we know that she becomes the next HOH. But like looking forward, let's say Jason or Joe or both get the boot, is everyone else really going to target Faven? Or are they going to start looking at each other? I think the answer is each other. And I hope for Faven that she's put herself in a position where like she's able to make it to the point where things on that other side are going to begin to shake, because people are looking to make moves. That is not a solidified 6 of Caroline, Emily, Fletcher, Jackson, Kayla, and Luke. Far from it, actually. So we'll see if she's able to maneuver. I definitely cannot give Faven a green score. She's not doing anything actively enough to set herself up there to be good, like in that way. But I don't hate what we've gotten from her. Plus, I think she's super fun. So I was at the 4 last week. Stephen was at the 5, and we landed at the 4.5. I'm, for shits and gigs, for being safe this week, going up. People exposed their cards for her. She knows where people lie a bit more. She has easy targets if she were to win HOH, which she does. I live just a little bit. So I'm gonna give Faven a 5. And this is a little bit of just like personally. I'll admit it.
Yeah, I would say I think I see Faven a little bit differently than you, maybe. I fully agree, even now, with like, if they're taking shots at that side, like, it's Joe and it's Jason. I think, especially now, like, after, like, Fletcher didn't want to put up Jason initially, but after he did, and now, like, that bridge is burnt. I think Faven is the third to go, if at all, on that list of the three.
And I
Um,
agree with you. My only counter to that is like in the same way that I feel that way about like Caroline for the other side. It's like, for example, let's say Faven doesn't win HOH in this next week. It's like, well, Jason's safe, so that's one of the three. All it takes is one veto win for Joe, or in all honesty, like Luke winning head of household. Like for Faven, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. But I also disagree, and you said it before, like, I think cracks could start forming in that like group. It's not even a group, but like that like mush of six sooner rather than later.
and
And
it's
I
not even like could start forming, like they're forming slash
exactly,
formed.
exactly. So it's not even like there's a tight group of six against Joe, Jason, and Faven. Like that's not what's happening. So I don't necessarily think that although it looks like it's them three from that side, them three against everybody else. Like I don't necessarily think that that's true. And with Faven winning competitions, and I honestly think like Faven getting to the end, like I think she has a. I don't think she's one to count out in a jury vote, to be honest. And especially if Alex is already on the jury, Jason and Joe would probably be sitting on the jury in that case. I don't know. I'm going up to a 6 for Faven, and that's not because that we know that she wins HOH, but I think that this, especially, and it is partially also because of like the attitude as well. But I think that she's playing a genuine game, and even she's told people that like she's probably gonna have to put them up. She's been like, ah ha ha, I love you, I'm so sorry, but like I am probably gonna put you up because like you put me up, like you Fletcher, you tried putting me up this week. Like I love you so much, but like I have to put you up. So I think with the combination of the fact that people like her and also like Jason and Joe have just painted themselves so much larger that I think we can see her stick around towards the latter part of this game. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think a 6 is unjustified. For me, the only reason I'm not quite there is like I agree that I totally 100% agree that could happen. But for me, the keyword in that scenario is could. And I just don't see her actively. She hasn't talked to anyone on that other side to set herself up for that yet. As soon as she starts talking to them more, I'm fully right there with you. It just needs to be like one step further for me. So we'll see though.
I don't necessarily disagree with Fletcher. Fletcher.
Oh, Fletcher. King can't catch a break.
Mm-mm.
This was the final 10. He had option taking himself out of the equation because obviously he's not going to self-nominate himself. He had 9 options, and 5 of them went up this week. Yikes!
He only could have nominated 2 other people. So,
Big yikes. That's not true.
well, he couldn't have nominated Luke because he won a veto.
Oh, even so, that's 3 with Caroline, Emily, and
Well,
Kayla.
it would have been Caroline, Emily,
And
Jackson.
Kayla.
Oh,
Oh, he did nominate Kayla.
so
Jackson.
Caroline, Emily, Jackson. Yeah, you're right.
Um, yeah, either way though, like, oh my lord, his cards got exposed. And like, oof. Oh God. Yeah, this just wasn't good. Not entirely his fault. I think like if Luke didn't use the veto and it was just Alex and Joe they were gonna sit up there and Alex still just went home, I think he's in a much better position because I think that 6 still trust each other a lot more. At this point now, as soon as Fletcher crossed the threshold of putting Kayla up, which I think was because of the six, Kayla is the closest one to the other side, and in all honesty, is the one that the other side likes the most. Like Kayla has done a good job this week at keeping up ties with Jason, with Joe, with Faven. She's like the only one that has reached out to talk to them because everyone else, and by everyone else, I mean Emily and Caroline only. I mean them two specifically and only, are like, oh, we're not working with them. We're targeting them. So like, we're not going to talk to them or give them any information and like be really obvious about it. And Kayla, like, we're not talking about Kayla. We're talking about Fletcher. Wow, what a side tangent. We'll get to Kayla more. But aside from that, Fletcher, I think by putting Kayla up, has pushed Kayla further away from him to other people that she has the ability to go to. I think it would have been smarter to put up either A, maybe Jackson, who probably sits pretty in the middle, or B, Caroline, easy pawn. I don't know. I think there were better options if he knew everything. Um, Granted he didn't, and that's why Kayla went up. But we'll see how that turns out in the future. Um, I don't know. I just think his cards got exposed a bit, and I feel like the numbers that he could have solidified for himself leaving last week are now dissipating heading into the next week. Because obviously you've got Faven, Jason, and Joe that are targeting him. You've now got Kayla saying like, I want him out in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and I think you've got Luke seeing like, yeah, he's a big threat. That's got to go. So, all have to say, everything is not coming up Fletcher for me. I think he's going to have a rough time getting to the end. And I think he is. When I was talking about the one exception to like, we can't rank positionally rule, I think Fletcher is that exception because I think that like most people would agree he needs to go.
Yeah.
And it's because he's been so dangerous this whole time, which is great for him. For me, I raised my score all the way up to a 6 last time. I'm gonna drop it back down to a 4. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I mean, looking at this week for Fletcher, winning HOH after he almost went home. A must. A good move. A good win. Going for Alex and Joe. Good. Positive. Put them on the block. Slap them up there. One of them's got to go. Okay. My thing is like, Scott, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like people did this in season 3. Why is nobody trying to figure out people's hit list targets?
People, I mean, it's not nobody is. Luke has figured it out, knows it, and that's why he wanted Jason out this week, first and foremost. Because he was like, if Jason goes out this week, then Alex isn't safe next week, and we can take her out then. And if Alex isn't safe next week, then Joe is safe, who is my closest ally on the other side as well. Whereas like now he knows, he's like, crap, okay, so if Alex had to go this week, we can't take out Jason next week, which means it would have to be Joe. But if it's Joe, then we can't take out Jason. Like Luke knows. And
Why did
Kayla,
nobody know Faven was safe?
because there was one little hole and that was it. They knew it was either Jason or Faven that was safe this week. They knew of Jason and Faven. One of them had Alex and one of them had Isabel.
And nobody knew about the veto. Or who had the veto, I guess.
Not until the very last minute, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That I mean, either way, no matter what order he did it, he was gonna have to nominate Jason and Faven. The real tough part was trying to get Luke not to use the veto. Didn't end up working. I was at a 5 last week. I'm going down to a 4 as well.
Alrighty.
Poor Fletcher. Like he didn't do anything wrong, and I do really like him, but like it is time to go soon. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't have enough energy again to like re-root for Fletcher. Like I really liked rooting him out of eviction last week, but now it's like I don't want to do it again. So there's that. Moving on to Jackson.
Can you start with Jackson? I'm sending Jason his hit list thing.
Yeah. Jackson. I think I feel very similarly to Jackson as I did last week. I think Jackson is someone who is still pushing for a lot of what he wants. And I think that again, we talked about how there's not going to be any surprise nominations anymore. All these people, or most of these people, have touched the block, with the exception of with a couple. Um, but I think that even if he were to be on the block, there are so many of these people have either more enemies against him or are such bigger targets than him that I think he would stay against a lot of these people here. And if he gets to the end, I think that he has such a great case to make for himself. He's really likable, first of all, and he can state of how all of these he's like thought through all these decisions um and push for certain things to happen. So I feel really good about Jackson. What about you, Scott?
I agree. I feel twofold on Jackson, and 50% of me fully agrees with you. I think Jackson is the person that is viewing the game from the widest lens. I think if we had to rank it, like Caroline and Emily are the smallest, worst lens of all bad lenses to ever lens. And they're only thinking of like themselves and like their small little alliance. Then you've got like maybe like Joe, one outside of that. Then like Faven and Fletcher. Then you've got Kayla, who's got a good sense of it, but maybe isn't the most in it still, but like getting there. Then you have Jason, who I think is a good understanding, but not the hindsight. Then you've got Luke, who is like seeing it even more. But then you've got Jackson, who like sees everyone else seeing it. And no one has picked up on the fact that Jackson is seeing it all. So that's key. That is huge for Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Because information is power. My only hesitation with Jackson, I compare him a lot to EJ from BBSS 11
Sure.
because of the fact that, he's in this position where it's a great position. No one really wants to take a shot at him, but he's no one's number one. He's no one's number two. Barely anyone's number three. He's like everyone's number 3.5, 4. You know what I mean?
But with that, I think that he's nobody's like number one target either.
Well, exactly. That goes with being everyone's number 3.5, 4 ally. You know what I mean?
Which I think is I would almost argue that it's better to be in the middle in that sense than be someone's number one and two or three people's number one target. I think the fact that nobody is directly going after him right now and a lot of people think they have him on the edge is really, really good for him. And as people start to get evicted, people's lists of allies have to bump up one. Once
Agreed.
so
I agree with everything that you're saying. I think for right now, it still is precarious for him. If he were to land in like the nightmare scenario, for an example like this, if someone's named safe and someone else wins the veto and Jackson needs to go on the block, very easy for the votes to be on the wrong side. Because he doesn't have anyone writing for him. He only would have people, I think, writing against others, which is just as powerful right now.
Yeah.
It just depends on where it lies. The only other thing that the only thing that I disagree with you on is that if Jackson gets to the end, he has this great case of like, here are all the things I've been pushing for and been doing. This cast has been very cagey. Jackson has had great reads on what he wants to have happen. And I totally agree with that. But wanting something to happen and like realizing what's your best move and like being too cagey to actually talk to people and do it is two different things in my opinion. And like, like Jackson wanted Fletcher to stay last week. And he was a vote to keep Fletcher. Absolutely. Great. That was not Jackson's move. Jackson did not push for that. He like was talking with Luke and like waited to like hear if other people got, but like Luke was the one that got those numbers. Luke actively pushed for it. Jackson did not. And like that's the only difference there, where it's like, as of right now, he hasn't been on the wrong side of anything, but he hasn't active. Like if I had to name Jackson's moves, they don't exist for me right now. And there's still so much time left for them to happen. So like this isn't me saying like Jackson isn't a good player that can't make moves. I think he can and he will, but I just haven't seen it yet. All that to say, I think is the only person that no one is targeting in the game. Maybe with one other exception. And I think he has a great view on the game. I just don't think that as of right now, he has the allies that he can really depend on to safely push things to do things. So I'm at a positive score, but I'm going to stay up the 6 that I've given Jackson.
Yeah, I also think I wasn't attempting to paint his gameplay if he got to the jury as this like masterful thing that he's been doing. Which is why I'm also at a 6 as well. I'm not like going crazy about it, but I think that out of the people here, and you've seen out of the scores we've given so far, I think Jackson is top 3 people to watch out for as a winner of the season. I don't know if that's like a crazy hot take. I think he's top 3. Um, that's in combination of getting there and winning the season. So I'm going for a 6 as well. But I think that I agree with you. He still has to do more.
He can't ride out the position that he's in and
Exactly.
expect to
It's
win.
not like he's done so much great stuff so far that he can just kind of like cruise to the end and then he has a case. I would assume that like with what he's been doing so far and what he would have to do to get to the end, he would need to be making these moves. So 6 for me. Awesome. Jason.
Okay, Jason. I'm continuously impressed with him. I love Jason. I don't know. Like I feel like I just love everything that they're doing. Great. End of my TED talk on Jason. No, I Jason is someone, thank you, that like is an example of someone that will push for things
Mm-hmm.
and is open to, oh, like you have another thought? Okay, let's talk about like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like Jason is proof that like you can actively push for things in the game and actively have alliances and hold on to info and be fine. Is Jason a target moving forward? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But with a game like Big Brother, in the turn of a hat, your ally wins HOH and you're fine. You find a secret veto and you're fine. You have hitless safety and you're fine. You can't count someone out because like they're being targeted by a few people. No one's except Luke's number one target is Jason. Everyone is still looking at Joe. You know what I mean? I think Jason has a great read on the game. I think Jason has proven to be a great player in the game. The fact that they found the veto first and came in clutch this week, maybe Jason didn't have to use it. But I certainly wouldn't have risked it if I was in their spot. So that, I don't know. It's just for me right now, Jason is the hardest person to give a score to because it is simultaneously precarious and great. I see Faven and Jason as inverses of one another, where Faven I don't see in a precarious position, but isn't playing the most actively amazing. Jason is playing actively great, but is in a precarious position. For the No, I can't raise my score up to a green just because Caroline and Emmy are so close-minded to working with them for some reason. And Luke, I think, really wants Jason out. And obviously, like the Fletcher thing isn't great. So I'm gonna say it a 5. I'm gonna say it a 5 for Jason this week. Um, but like I if I had to pick someone that like I want to see in the end game, Jason is there. Like I would love to
Yeah.
see Jason there on finale night because they deserve it.
Yeah. My thoughts on Jason this week. I think credit to good things. Credit to him for getting the veto, and I agree with you. I think that I would almost go out on a limb and say he almost definitely didn't have to use it, but
You
I
never
can't,
know though.
I can't imagine a world where I would be playing and I'd say, I'm on the block. Let me not use my secret power of veto. So I definitely don't fault him for that. Like, I think that it was good to ensure safety for the week, get off, campaign for allies, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. And also cause a crack in the other side. I think was smart in general, just to have force Fletcher to put someone up who's not one of the core four. Um, we know that he's safe for next week with the hit list target. So Jason is in the final 8. And as we look at this, my thought process on the hit list and the safety of the hit list winner is, yeah, he might be targeted by a few people currently, but this buys you another week to a have the house flip on its head with something crazy new that's happening. This house is flipping and things are blowing up every other day here. So having just being safe and being able to wait through another week is critical just to have something change in your favor. Um and B, um just having that ability to have that time to be safe and talk to more people and get in better with people. I think that it was a negative that Fletcher had to ultimately nominate him over someone else first. I think that showed him that, maybe although I've been talking to these people, like they're more with each other than they are with me and the other 4 BB snappers. But Jason's social game and strategic game, I think, speaks far past him being targeted a little bit. I'm going to go up to a 6 this week. Um, Credit for the veto, credit for being safe next week, credit for pushing for something. I think that I don't think that they should have voted for Alex to stay. I think that was a mistake. All 3 of them. Um,
But
because
Jason was the only one that pointed it out.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Credit for him for that. Um, I don't know why. Uh, I guess it was pretty obvious that the 3 of them were pushing for Alex to stay anyway, that it was like they might as well just done it. Like they obviously knew that was gonna happen. But 5.5 for Jason this week. We'll see what happens when he has safety this week. We'll see what goes on. Awesome. Joe.
Joe. Um, Joe's still on the bottom. What else is new? Um, there's this. If Joe somehow manages to like make it to the end, Joe wins. I don't see a world where he doesn't. You know what I mean? He's got the allies on the jury. He has the story. There's all that. Um, I'd say the likelihood of him getting to the end is like near nothing, but like I don't know. I'm gonna stop saying it's impossible because he's made it over halfway through the game and he's still here. And he's been on the bottom rung since like day 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like all that to say, it shows it's possible to keep scraping by. The margin for error gets smaller and smaller the fewer and fewer people that are here, but not impossible. So there's that, and I give him credit for that. Um, the only thing I'll say about Joe is like I feel like we've seen all his tricks. I think we've seen We've seen the reverse psychology. Like we tried doing that, it worked. People aren't falling for it again. We've seen the I'm beefing with Alex. You want to keep her, so we go after each. Like we've seen that. People aren't falling for it again. There aren't many like new things that I think Joe can do to like get new people to trust him, especially if their existing allies are still in the game. I don't see Caroline or Emmy turning to Joe over most people. I don't see Fletcher going to Joe. I think Jackson sees Joe as too big of a threat. Maybe Kayla. And he's got Luke a little bit. So like all to say, I feel like he's running out of wiggle room for him to like Houdini himself out of a bad situation. In addition, God, he's so gullible and just like doesn't have the best reads on things, in my opinion. This is something that I will give Alex more credit for in their duo, where it's like Joe will like say something and Alex is like, no, no, no. And then like normally Joe like comes around to it, but it's like, for example, like with this week, I just feel like Luke screwed you on the vote last week. Granted, then Luke saved you with the veto, but then just like saying like no, like we've got Luke. I don't know. It was just I feel like a little too much. Like he just is getting played. He's getting played. And I think doesn't have many more avenues to turn to. With all that being said, though, I think the board has opened up. Whereas like if he's been the number one target for weeks, now I think he's certainly up there as a huge target, but Jason's also a huge target. Fletcher's also a huge target. And like other people are not far behind. So I am gonna raise my score actually. Only to a 4, but I'm gonna raise it. So it's a 4 for Joe for me.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, credit where credit is due. I think we were talking about this today, and I don't know if it's confirmed, but I think Joe is currently the only person in franchise history to have the veto used on him by 3 different people throughout the season. To also mention that he hasn't once used it on himself yet. Crazy that 3 people used the veto on him, which and the fact that he's been a pretty big target every time the veto has been used on him. So credit where credit is due. I think Joe is going to have a very difficult time escaping the target that was put on him like since week 2. He's been trying to outrun it ever since, and now that Alex is out of the game, I think that it's only become bigger, and I think that's another reason to not be so high on him this week is because he did just lose his ride or die closest ally number 1 in the game. I worry for Joe moving forward. I don't see any way that he can make it past the next couple of weeks. With all that being said, I would live for him to try and find a way to try and have other people become the targets in front of him because that's what he's been doing this entire game so far. But like you mentioned, the margin for error is becoming smaller. There's fewer and fewer people that can take the block and take the eviction before him.
I feel like Joe's problem is similar to I believe we used this analogy and said this about a lot of references to BBSS 11 tonight. To Eric at this point in the game from season 11 where it was like he had the power structure in the beginning and then all of a sudden he became target week after week after week. I think that Joe needs to stop, and this is like weird to say, I think he needs to stop thinking big of like, okay, how am I gonna like snow these people into like keeping me and like getting to work with me? And it's like, no, Joe, your sole goal is don't go home this week. Sole goal, focus on that. Win a comp, get a new ally. Like, don't come up with some plan to like trick people. Like, that's not going to work. They're not falling for it anymore. He just needs to scrape by week until there's a position that the game opens up that he can sneak into. He needs to wait for that to happen. He can't cause more chaos, because the more chaos he creates in like trying to trick people and do things is,
Yeah.
I think, pushing them away more to like not have the game break open for him to sneak in.
Yeah.
That's his issue.
Um, although Eric was winning like a competition every week.
And Eric was great at that. Like, he was able to get to a point in the game where he could break it open and get back in.
Yeah.
And then granted, Dakota said, "Snip. Sorry, Eduardo, not your move."
Eduardo. Who said that? Anyway, I was at the 2 last week. I'm only gonna go up to a 3. I think it was a tough week for him. He was on the block. He lost his closest ally. Um, and things aren't looking too great for him. I mean, we know now that he's not going to be going home this week with Faven in charge. Um, but we'll see what his fate ends up being. Poor Joe. What did he do to deserve this? Cool. Kayla.
Okay, listen.
Oh, Kayla. Okay.
It's rare that I feel like I feel this way, because on paper, like, Kayla isn't the most active and she knows that and whatnot. Somehow, she hasn't touched the block until this week. And with that, I feel like now she's got a clear pointed target that she can like tell people. And I think has every excuse now to be like, okay, well, this side screwed me. So, hey, other side, let's talk. You know what I mean? But at the same time, still has people on that side to go back to. I think that too many people are counting her out as someone who like hasn't been around to do enough. But I think that Kayla is in the most dangerous position at this point for everyone else. I say that because she's got her duo with Luke, which I think is key. And I think that in the end, Luke is inclined to take Kayla to the end. You know what I mean? Like, if he were to have that chance, I think that him and Kayla are the correct duo for the both of them. So that. I think her going up by Fletcher is like a big old slap in the face. And made her realize, like, okay, so I'm at the bottom of your totem pole. That's fine. Game's game, but don't expect me to keep you again if need be. And Queen, go off. I don't know. I just love a lot of what she's doing. She's open about where she's at in the game. She's like, so reach out to everyone still. She is the only person that is reaching out to everyone still. And even then, just like being like, hey, I fully realize we haven't talked the most, but I do not think it's smart for you to put me up this week, or here's what I'm thinking for the vote, or let's talk. Like, because there's only certain numbers here. And now she is taking the opportunities to do things. And that's huge, 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 huge. I don't know. Call me crazy. Call me absolutely crazy. She was on the block and 1 vote away from going home. But realistically, from this point forward, who wants to put her up and target her? It's not Joe, Jason, or Faven. It's not Luke. It's not Fletcher. I don't think he wants to do it again. I think she's in a great spot, and I think she, like, so long as she can just like keep up a little bit of like just talking to people here and there, I think she is a dark horse to make it far. Win, I think she would need to do something like crazy and like a big Final Four cut someone move type of thing. I'm a score of 7. Maybe it's crazy.
Yeah, I will call you crazy. That is kind
Maybe
of
it's crazy. I just think that she is the only person that is, or not the only person, one of two, maybe three if you count Jackson, people that is reaching out to all sides and have all sides saying, yeah, Kayla's someone that we can loop in and depend on and things. And I think she's doing a good job. 7 for Kayla. More like Slayla. I hate myself.
Yeah, me too. I think for Kayla this week, looking at it objectively, she was on the block. She was one vote from going home. I think that that is not necessarily something to entirely hold against her because the three people who voted her were voting for Alex and not against Kayla. And the four people who voted for her to stay weren't gonna vote against her. Like there was no chance that that was happening. I see your point about her not leaving anytime soon. And I understand. But all it takes is one final nomination against someone else who people are more connected to and feel for a better use for moving down the line in the game for Kayla to be screwed. And as we get to fewer and fewer people, that's fewer and fewer votes needed to save someone and send someone else home. We're already looking at 3 next week. With her chances of winning the game, I don't think she has really a lot to show for it right now. Again, still lots to go in the game, still lots of people to be evicted, still only has to beat one person. But as it stands right now, I don't know if she beats some of these flashier players. But I think there is something to be said for her having some of the best chances to stick around right now. She was on the block this week. She could have gone home theoretically. I do really like the position that she's in, but she's not being undercoverly flashy enough where I feel like it warrants me going up. I'm actually gonna go down to a 5.
Damn, I was hoping you wouldn't do that.
Sorry. Just like the fact like she was one vote away from going home. And it's like, yeah, it didn't happen this time, and it probably wasn't gonna happen this time. But who's to say something like that isn't gonna happen again? Especially like it was by Fletcher, but she was kind of just thrown up as like, yeah, out of the people who are on like quote unquote our side, like you're the one that I don't that I want up there out of everyone. So that's not great.
That's not great, but yeah. I hear that. For me, it's like to your point of like all it takes is one nomination. And like that's what I said about Jackson. For me though, it's like the difference between Jackson and Kayla is like no one has anything against Jackson. So it'll be a thing of like who's Jackson is up against. With Kayla, I think it's less so no one has anything against Kayla. I think it's everyone has a use for Kayla. And I think, in my opinion, Kayla is like the less threatening version of anyone else in the game for anyone. Like if
See that,
Kayla
but if
landed on the block next to Fletcher, Luke is like, okay, I have them both as allies, but Kayla's less threatening. Fletcher goes. Like I just see her sticking around. Whereas like people are really going to bat for some people. I think that people will equally not like. I think Kayla is a similar option to everyone. I don't know if I'm like explaining this correctly, but like Jackson hasn't established connections with people. He's just been like very neutrally positive. Whereas Kayla has, whether she realizes it or not. And I think if Kayla were to land on the block next to someone from either side, the bigger threat always goes because people see Kayla as someone that they can use as a less threatening version of whoever's on the block. I think I explained that correctly.
I understand what you mean.
Just the fact that so many people today, Faven, Jason, and Joe, and Alex, but now Alex is gone, were like, Kayla, it's crazy. You are literally the only person that has like talked to me since last vote. What are these other people doing? This isn't me being like Kayla's a mastermind. No, Kayla's doing the bare minimum, but on a season where no one else is, it's going a long way. So that's where I'm at.
Sure. Fair. Um, Part of me worries with that of if everyone has a use for Kayla, does anyone really have a use for Kayla?
But no one sees it. That's my thing. As soon
I
as they
don't,
realize Kayla's in the middle and on both sides, sure, absolutely
but
dangerous.
I don't, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if that's necessarily the case for that much longer. And then if, and then
We'll
like,
see though. She'd have to draw a line in the sand though.
exactly. So we'll see. But just that mixed with like the not completely exemplary strategic gameplay, like I'm
I
out.
don't know. I give her more strategic points than I think she's done more to actively push for things than Caroline and Emily, and even Faven to an extent. Like,
Yeah, I would say that. I don't know about Faven, but I would say definitely Caroline and Emily.
I don't know. I'm feeling good about Kayla. And don't get me wrong, a 7 it could be a little high, but I think a 5 is a little low. And granted, she landed at a 6. So,
No, look at that. Who did that? All right, Luke.
I mean, Luke continues to impress me. Luke continues to impress me. Luke, in my opinion, like, should win this season. There's no one comparable to Luke right now, in my opinion, in terms of position, active gameplay, good conversations with people, like good actor, liar, whatever you want to call it. Like he's able to really dumb himself down and not make it seem like he's masterminding these things when he is. He absolutely is. He masterminded the Fletcher vote. Granted, he didn't know exactly what was going to go down with all of this, but like he knew that him saving Joe would bring him closer to Joe, restore that connection a little bit, which could be crucial down the line if Joe or one of his allies wins HOH, which will result Fletcher to get more blood on his hands, which is exactly what happened. He knew about the like he said in his DR, he was like, oh my God, with the hit list and the secret veto, there's a chance that Fletcher like could have to nominate like 5 people here. And then look at what happened. Exactly that. And I think Luke has on both sides. Joe thought Luke was with him. Fletcher was like, Luke, are you against after last vote? Joe was like, Luke, are you against me? What? And Luke was like, no. And then completely restored that relationship this week. After the veto meeting, Fletcher was like, Luke, are you against me? Luke was like, no, and completely restored that. So sure, we look right now, and like after the vote, Alex left being like, and Luke says thank. But like, are you really taking Alex's word for anything right now? She just whined and didn't compete in the veto with peace and love. I based off of the track record of what Luke's been able to do, I see him being able to restore his relationship with Joe. Because what else is Joe gonna do? Not target Fletcher or Emmy or Carol or the people that are clearly coming after him. Like Luke is the best option to work with for a lot of people right now. And Luke's doing a great job at dumbing himself down. to not be the one that's seeming like he's making all the moves. No one sees Luke as being the one that's controlling things. The only person that's lightly alluded to it is Jackson being like, I see what Luke's doing. He's smart. But Jackson hasn't been like, wow, Luke just made this whole, like, you know what I mean? So even then, I think Luke is in a great spot. I think he is set up best to win the game. I would love to see him win the game. I think he deserves to win it at this point. Still a lot of game left to play. Of course, a lot of things can go different. This is not me being like, Luke for the win. There's no way it doesn't happen. There's a lot that could happen. But I was at an 8 last week. And this is another week where I think he got exactly what he wanted. He got exactly what he wanted. So I'm at an 8 again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that Luke is at the forefront of this season right now, especially in terms of leading to win ultimately, combined again with getting there and winning the season. And I agree with you. First of all, let me start. I'm also going to go up to an 8. Um, I agree with you that he's just been pushing everything he's wanted, and it's just it's gotten what he's wanted. He wanted Alex to go home, which is like again, like not like super crazy thing that happened. Like she excuse me, she was gonna go home again pretty much this entire week. But using the veto on Joe, solidifying some trust with him, and then forcing Fletcher to nominate someone else who had to nominate someone else who had to nominate someone else. Um, really, really good. Putting that target on Fletcher and taking it away from himself, who ultimately was the one that used the veto. Um, really good. And I love to see how many options that Luke has to work with moving forward. Um, and again, I don't think any of those people are necessarily going to burn him at this point or right now, because they need to work with him. So we'll see. But Luke is doing a great job. I would love to see Luke win the season at the end of it, but we'll see. 8. First 8 since week 3.
And
Yeah.
at least the first 8 is no longer speaking to the second 8.
Yeah. First 8, while the previous 8 is now at a 1.
Oh, how the turns have tabled.
Yeah.
Yeah, that caps it off for the week. Alex, look at those bookends. Alex at the 1. Again, with peace and love, we can say it's not a quit all we want. Essentially, she quit the game, except for at the very last moment was like, but wait, and then still went home. And then Luke at the other end, killing it, absolutely killing it. Excited to see how this turns out. Steven, any predictions for who goes home next week? Granted, we know that Faven wins HOH, but
Should we take that into account?
sure. But I mean, like, in all honesty, even if Faven didn't win, I think now, like, Kayla's looking at Fletcher. I think Luke's looking at Fletcher. I think Fletcher's the number 1 pick to go home this week.
There is always a veto, but if he doesn't win the veto or if a miracle doesn't happen for him specifically, like I don't know, maybe Emily.
Emily is the backup option for Faven. I'd say in the grand scheme, if it wasn't Fletcher, I would say it would be Joe. I think the 2 biggest targets. But in terms of Faven being the HOH,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's not Fletcher, I mean Fletcher and Emily, I expect will be the initial noms. In the event that Fletcher wins the veto and comes off, I think Faven puts up Caroline.
Caroline probably, yeah.
And if not Caroline, then Luke. If it's Caroline versus Emily, I think Caroline goes home. If it's Luke versus Emily, I think Emily goes home. So we'll see.
I could see Emily still going home against Caroline.
I could too.
Okay. That's the end of the video.
See you next week.